So what's good, Team G fam? It's your boy L, and I'm back with another reaction. How y'all feel? Welcome back to the channel. Salute, man. And next up on the blacklist, we got 5 unsolved mysteries that were finally solved. All right. So, like I said before, when we get these finally solved, we ain't got to put on our investigative hats or nothing like that. You know, salute to all the families who got some sort of relief from these cases, man. All right. We're going to get into it. Before we do, man, please make sure your house is locked up, secure. Your alarm is on, windows, doors locked, everything's secure. If you're new, hit the subscribe button, join the fam, and here we go.
When a missing person case becomes cold after months or even years of not hearing anything, most people assume there won't be a happy ending. But some missing person cases can be resolved, even when there seems like no hope. Number 5. When Stuart Higham called his parents asking if he could borrow luggage, they didn't think anything was unusual. He was planning to move apartments in the near future, and they thought it was just him starting to pack up. They were working, so they told him they would talk to him later. But it was the last time they would hear from him for 3 years. Stuart was a 24-year-old man from England when he disappeared in January of 2011. The holiday season had been a month of celebrating with his family and friends. Stuart's birthday was at the end of December, and the last time his parents saw him was at a meal to celebrate the day. According to them, he seemed his normal self, chatting and joking as usual. The call to ask for the bag came about a week later on January 4th. He was currently living in a flat with 2 friends who saw him that morning. He was later seen on CCTV at a video store trading in some games, and then he vanished. Stuart was reported missing after his roommates said that he didn't come home that day.
Now, one thing I will say, bro, like, if you gotta be strapped for cash to be returning your games and for money. Because what do we all know, for those of us who play games, we're gamers, whatever the case may be, they don't give you much for them games. So if you're taking it trying to get money, in my mind, you're really strapped for cash, because they don't really give you true value of what those games are. Because they're going to give you what they think plus they still got to make money off the game. So they're giving you pennies. You know what I mean? So that's kind of an indication of he must have been really strapped for cash or something like that.
Stuart was reported missing after his roommates said that he didn't come home that day, and a search began. It was out of character for Stuart to just leave without telling anybody, and thankfully the case was taken seriously by police. It was only after Stuart disappeared into thin air that his parents discovered he'd been laid off from his job at a call center a few months before. He hadn't said anything about work during the birthday celebrations, and now his parents worried that he might have felt stressed and ashamed after losing his job.
Facts. I told you it had to be strapped for cash, bro. It had to be. You ain't selling your games back to, let's just say, GameStop or something like that. You know you ain't gonna get nothing. So that lets you know he was strapped for cash. And then yes, being a 24-year-old, losing your job, I know for me, I didn't want to be a burden on my parents. I figured they did enough already of raising me and, providing me for them. Now I'm out on my own. How would it look like for me? And this was just my mindset growing up. How would it look like for me to have to be, reaching back out to them to help me? I feel like a failure. I feel like I let them down. I feel like I'd be, so I probably would have been ashamed too. And, to ask and wanting to stand on my own 2 feet. It's not necessarily the pride, although it is a little bit of pride and ego, but for more, it's me learning to stand on my own feet and figure it out.
Strangely, police were able to discover Stuart, or at least his phone, had been in France the day after he vanished. His friends confirmed that he'd been looking at the Eurostar website shortly before the disappearance, so it seemed possible this was Stuart. Stuart was put on the International Missing Peoples Register, but there were still no sightings of him. It wasn't even certain if Stuart was still in France, or if he had traveled through Europe or even returned to the UK. On the 3-year anniversary of Stuart's disappearance, his parents made another appeal for information. His father had been working with the Missing People charity to try to find him, but this was the first time the case gained national media attention, and that seemed to do the trick. A few weeks later, police heard from a man in Germany claiming to be Stewart. Authorities were able to track the man down and confirm that this was the missing person. His parents flew out to Germany to be reunited with their missing son after years of wondering what had happened to him. Today, Stewart lives a private life, but his father continues to raise money for missing people, even after Stewart was found. Number 4.
Dang.
Kevin Bear.
At least it wasn't. We know how these cases could have went. So thankfully nothing happened to him or nothing like that. You know, it's still a long time. A lot of stress you still put on your parents. You know what I mean? But hey, it's better than the alternative, I'll say.
Found. Number 4. Kevin Bear Henry is a First Nations environmental activist who disappeared in November of 2021 in a remote area of Vancouver Island. The area was seeing massive protests against logging companies that wanted to work in an area of old-growth trees. In particular, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police had come under fire for their actions against protesters. Kevin had gone in their brown and beige van to join the protest in Port Renfrew, but kept in touch with their family throughout the journey. They'd reached Lake Cowichan by November 27th and called their family after they pulled over to rest for the night. While on the call, Kevin said they could hear someone knocking on the side of the van and was concerned that somebody may have been stalking them. The call would be the last time Kevin was heard from, and after a few days of silence, their family grew increasingly worried that something might have happened to them. But due to the actions of the police at the protest, the family wasn't sure if the police could be trusted to try to locate Kevin. Eventually, on December 11th, Kevin's family reported them missing. Air searches began, but they couldn't narrow down where Kevin might have been. On the ground, search and rescue teams wouldn't go ahead. The family tried to raise funds for their own search and rescue team, but with the cold Canadian winter already in full effect, there was a worry that it might be too late. Then, after 2 months of silence, Kevin's friends finally got a call they feared would never come. Kevin had been found and was now recovering at a restaurant in Lake Cowichan.
What the?
They left Lake Cowichan and continued on their journey on November 28th, only to get stuck in a remote and mountainous wooded area. For more than 70 days, Kevin remained in the van. They survived off of tinned food and melted snow to drink. But
Bro! What? 70 days? 70 days. That's like, all right, go in your room right now, close up, 70 days. That's all you got. 70. You be losing your mind. No. You don't get the TV. Throw that out in the hallway. No. You ain't got no plug in that van back then. No, throw that out in the hallway too. Stay in there 70 days. Throw you some canned meat in there and that's about it. And then you're going to be drinking toilet water. 70 days, bro. Thank God ain't nothing happened to him, fam. But I know, he definitely got to write a book after this. After that happened, he had to write a book.
In the van. They survived off of tinned food and melted snow to drink, but knew that survival like this wouldn't last for long. On February 7th, Kevin decided to leave the van and make it back to civilization. Walking along one of the remote logging roads, a pair of loggers came across Kevin 2 days after leaving the van. The loggers had seen the missing person flyers all over town and recognized Kevin as the missing individual.
Wow.
Kevin was shocked to discover just how long they'd been missing and were taken back to the town where the loggers gave them food for money.
Bro been missing so long he lost track of the days. He didn't even know how long he was out there. That's too long. That's way too long.
It was a surprising yet happy end to this missing person case. Number 3. It's always important to remember that not every missing person wants to be found, and not every missing person case is what it might seem on the surface.
True.
One of the most recent examples of this came with the case of Neil Aidken. According to newspaper reports, in July of 2021, a man named Jerry Alkvist had taken in a homeless person who'd been acting strangely near his home in Sweden. According to Jerry, the man seemed disoriented and appeared to be homeless. The man was evasive but said he was born and grew up near Leeds, England. Jerry took to Facebook to try to find the man's family, as he believed the man was probably a missing person, and eventually the post found its way to the family of Neil Aidken. Neil had gone missing in May of 2020. At first, it was believed he may have traveled to Scotland. His family claimed Neil had mental health problems and was suffering from psychosis and paranoid beliefs.
Listen, fam, I ain't gonna encourage nobody to do that. I just can't. I can't encourage nobody. You see somebody outside your home, homeless, and you take them in. Granted, you have the most hugest heart, and I salute that, bro. I applaud that. But the same thing that make you laugh and make you cry. You know what I'm saying? That could have went, with all he's suffering from, that could have went totally bad for you. Why not contact the authorities instead of you taking matters into your own hands? Why are we so, you know what I mean? Like, standoffish from the authorities, man. What's the problem? What's the hesitancy of contacting them and letting them do their job? I don't understand that, man. I don't, bro. But we end up putting ourselves in a lot of like harmful situations, potentially. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man. Like, we gotta be smart. That could have went totally left.
Neil had mental health problems and was suffering from psychosis and paranoid beliefs. Police have made appeals for information, but the case quickly fell from the public eye. Neil's family was able to confirm the man Jerry had found was the missing man, and statements were made about how they wanted to bring Neil home. Neil was taken to a hospital in Sweden, but released not long after, and Neil's family feared that he may disappear again. They appealed for help, suggesting that he may not have a passport and had no income to survive on. However, this wasn't the case. It turned out Neil had disappeared of his own accord. He didn't get along with his family and was no longer in touch with them. He described the accusations that he was paranoid and mentally unwell as a smear campaign made by his family. Neil had gone to Sweden to a work opportunity.
Yo, it always be something between families, bro. Nah, he crazy. He crazy. Something wrong with him. He ain't right up here. And it really be your family. Damn, bro. Yo, that whole blood thicker than water thing, fam. Hey, all right.
4 years earlier, and was living in what he described as a fully equipped mobile home with heating. He'd come across Jerry while trying to hitchhike home after going shopping and avoided his questions simply because he wanted his own privacy. He'd actually gotten in touch with the police shortly after the first missing person reports in May to clarify that he was alive and well, but this hadn't been enough for his family. Neil has now returned to the UK, but will likely be keeping his distance from his relatives. It's safe to say the majority of missing person cases aren't like Neil's, but it's always important to remember that people have a right to privacy, and there may be more going on than is public knowledge.
I saw this story yesterday. It was talking about this guy living in, I think it was living in like a Chinese airport, something like that. And he was there because he wanted to be there to get away from his family. You know what I mean? It showed where he was laying at, how he had his shoes positioned, and had like a little pot up under the seat, had like a little cart with all his stuff on it, how he ate. Like, I was like, and he was content just to be away from his family. I'm like, man, bro. So when you think you're going through it with your family, understand, it's everybody go through it, bro. It's people just be like, yo, I'd rather be, he would rather be homeless living in a airport than to be around his family. That was crazy to me.
Number 2. Police investigating the disappearance of sisters Anna and Kim Hakzi were skeptical that they would be able to come back to their family with good news, or any news at all. That's because the sisters had been missing for more than 30 years with no trace of them. After such a long time, it was feared that they would be untraceable, and that it would be discovered something terrible had happened to them. But that wouldn't be the case. The two sisters disappeared from Lethbridge, Canada in the mid-1980s. Anna, the older of the two sisters, was estranged from most of the family, but was described as being inseparable from Kim. She had also been close to their father, but when he passed away in 1981, there was little tying her to the rest of the family. Not long after, both sisters cut all contact altogether and disappeared. The sisters were both adults, and their mother didn't report them missing. It wasn't until 2003 that they were finally reported missing. After such a long time, it was worried that there would be no way of tracing the women. It was even thought that they may have become the victims of a serial killer named Robert Pickerton, who had operated in the Vancouver area. DNA tests were conducted on his unidentified victims, but none were a match to the sisters. In 2012, a tip came through about a book written by someone using an alias one of the sisters was known to use. Police tried to contact the publishers of the book, but got no response. At first, it was thought the lead went nowhere, but detectives continued to investigate the name and discovered the author had published a number of books. A more recent article gave a photo of the author and an address to the United States, but officers still couldn't be sure if this was the missing woman. Even when they acquired a document where the author's next of kin was listed as her sister, they couldn't be sure. In February of 2017, police managed to get in contact with the woman they believed to be Kim. She hadn't used that name in over 30 years, but told police that she was the person they were looking for. She hadn't realized she and her sister were considered missing people. They just started their lives again and hadn't realized anybody had been missing them. Fingerprints confirmed the two people found in the US.
Come on now, I ain't buying that. You severed ties. You wanted to be away from them. You know what I mean? But the fact that you're gonna sit here and say you didn't realize that anyone missed you means you realize people would miss you. Come on, either you hope that or just come on. Be honest. Be honest about the situation. You did it. And that's how you felt. You didn't want to be around them. Cool. That's okay. That's cool. There's a lot of people out here I don't want to be around. You know what I mean? So don't sit up there and say that now.
Were the missing women. Their mother had passed away 4 years earlier, but their three brothers were relieved to discover their sisters were still alive and hoped to reconnect.
Now, that's tough right there, because, you know what I mean? You deal with that type of stuff, and then a parent dies, and then sometimes you left with a whole list of regrets of things you couldn't. You're talking to a person whose mom passed away, died during COVID. You know what I'm saying? And wasn't able to, because of her sickness, be around her as much as I would have liked to be, especially if I would have known it was her last day. So when you do stuff like that, you gotta weigh the possible outcomes. And maybe they were cool with that. You know what I mean? But you gotta weigh that as an option.
Number 1. There are plenty of missing person cases where the individual involved suffered from mental health problems shortly before they vanished. Sadly, lots of these cases end up resolved relatively quickly when a body is found, while in other cases, families are left wondering for years or even decades what happened to their lost loved one. For the Philippa family from Toronto, Canada, it was hard not to fear the worst had happened after 35-year-old Anton disappeared in March of 2012. Anton was described as an individualist and had been a humanitarian worker. That role had seen him walk all over Canada. According to his family, he was somewhat comfortable walking around barefoot and wanted to do good. About 2 years before he vanished, Anton was diagnosed with schizophrenia. His family struggled to get him the help that he needed. At first, it looked like he was making progress, but at the start of 2012, things rapidly went downhill. Anton was involved in an altercation that left him with assault and weapons charges. But before the case could go to court, he vanished. Anton's family found nothing out of place at it.
Vanish or skip bail, how you want to label it. You know what I mean? Vanish probably sound a lot better to say, but skip bail.
His home, his passport, and other important belongings were there, as well as all of his clothes and other possessions. It didn't look like he'd planned to run away, and the family believed something terrible had happened. Missing person flyers were handed out and put up in the local area, but there was no sign of Anton. There wouldn't be for another 5 years. It was December of 2017 before Stefan Pilipa would finally get a call saying that his brother had been located. But Anton wasn't found in Canada. He was more than 10,000 kilometers away in Brazil. A Canadian police officer had spotted a man that looked out of place walking along the side of the highway. At first, he mistook him for a beggar. He was wearing very worn clothes and had no shoes.
He looked like, to me, he was trying to be off the grid. Long hair, make you look different. Long beard, make you look different. He fit that description to me right now. Like, he ain't trying to, he's off the grid. He know what he could possibly be facing back home or whatever. Yeah. And then you look how far away you went.
His hair and beard were also long, but the officer got talking to the man and discovered he was from Canada, and his name was Anton. Anton was taken to a hospital where the police tried to contact his family. Before the family could be reached, he ran away again. Anton vanished in the state of Amazonas, a region known for its dangerous animals. There was fear that Anton made it all the way only to become the victim of a hungry crocodile. But thankfully, he was found again and taken to the hospital where he stayed until his family could be reached. Stefan flew down to be reunited with his brother, and the strange but true story of his disappearance came to light. He had decided to walk to the National Library of Buenos Aires in Argentina. Most of the journey was made on foot, but he would occasionally hitchhike a ride or stow away in larger vehicles. By the time he had made it, Anton was in bad shape and without an ID, so the library would not let him enter. He returned north and entered Brazil, where he was found. Some have cast doubts on Anton's story, but he definitely had the physical injuries to attest to it. In the end, his family were just happy to have their loved one back after so many years.
I get the family happy to have him back, definitely. You know what I mean? That stress is gone out of their life. You know what I mean? But I'm like some other people too. I have my doubts and reserves about that whole story of him. You know what I mean? Whether or not he was just, having an episode and something wrong. Because when they found him, took him to what did he do? He ran again. Seems to be a pattern here. You know what I mean? Just from the outside looking in, but to me, seems to be a pattern. But yeah, man, this was this should have been 5 strangely unsolved mysteries that were finally solved, because these were definitely strange. Definitely strange. But maybe it's just me. Y'all get at me in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Leave a like, share the video, and stick around and stay tuned until next one I'm gone. Peace.